This is a gorilla. Your folks are both gorillas. You are a gorilla.
They propose revisions that always seem to involve less respect for the rights of free nations and less freedom for the individual. These matters would be difficult under any circumstances. They are further complicated by a trend in Western countries away from global engagement and democratic confidence. Parts of Europe have developed an identity crisis. We have seen insolvency, economic stagnation, youth unemployment, anger about immigration, resurgent ethno-nationalism, and deep questions about the meaning and durability of the European Union. America is not immune from these trends. In recent decades, public confidence in our institutions has declined. Our governing class has often been paralyzed. The American dream of upward mobility seems out of reach for some who feel left behind in a changing economy. Bigotry seems emboldened. Politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets.
Now, as you may know, my running mate, Tim, is Catholic and went to Jesuit schools. And one of the things he and I have talked about is this idea from the Jesuits of the Magus, the more, the better.
Hello, and welcome to another reading of Code Word Barbelon. Today is Sunday, July 1st, 2018, and we are here on page 491, Kingdom of God or Masterpiece of Satan, The Secret Doctrine. And I'm joined here with Jörg. Hello, Jörg.
Of the book Code Word Barbelon that you missed. Hello, Brett. Yeah, wonderful to hear you again, and nice to see that you're up. But, the flesh is awake, but the spirit is still sleeping, right?
I think so, yeah. I only got up 15 minutes ago.
Okay, I have to say for our listeners once and for all, even though that I make jokes about that, I can understand that if you asked me in the morning at 9 o'clock to come to the microphone and do a reading like this, I would probably ask you if you're crazy. But but the point is, with the time difference, we have 7 hours in between. I have it here now 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you got it 10 a.m. in the morning.
I know.
It
doesn't leave much choice,
It doesn't leave us much choice, because when you have a more interesting time, that would be about, I don't know, 11 or 11 p.m.
Midnight,
in my time, something close to midnight, then I'm getting too much tired to do this. And somebody has to pay the price. So it's Brett. But the
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But the advantage of that should actually be, especially on a day like today, Sunday, where you don't have to do too much work on the Antichrist system, that you would have time afterwards to work on another video, so that we can get these readings out there, because they are not recorded for our computers, they are recorded for the people to know.
That's
and
right.
I understand that you have so many other things to do, and I absolutely understand that. I also want the people to understand that I'm not joking around with you, but that I have my fun with you as much as you have your fun with me, because we are here joined together in the Holy Spirit, and we are just having a good time together in the Spirit, telling the people about the truth.
As hard as that is to do, too, because we are flesh and spirit, like you just mentioned, and the flesh does have these horrible idiosyncrasies, shall we say? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah.
All these things, these habits and desires and all this stuff, and it all wraps in to part of your life, and you got to deal with it, one way or another. It comes around. You got to deal with it.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, this noon, after having a walk with my mother and the dog, before the heat was really getting too hot, I went to visit my friend Tom, who lives in the village next door, because he told me that his neighbor's cherry tree is ready to be plucked, and he left some cherries on for me. So
Oh, cherries are good.
I went on a ladder and I
I
plucked
like
some cherries.
Oh,
80%,
yes.
yeah, 80% of the cherries in the tree were gone bad, but the few that I picked, I'm just having
Nice.
here to eat right now. Maybe during our reading
Wonderful.
when I have the time. They are so tasteful, just wonderful.
And you're not far from the
And
coast, is that correct?
yeah, I'm not far from the coast. I mean, the coast is about 120 kilometers.
It's
That's
not
80
far.
miles,
That's
75
not
miles
far.
from here.
Yeah, here in the States, there's a state called Washington State, and
Hmm.
in Washington they have all kinds of cherries. And I moved out there some years ago, and I remember just, man, I'm telling you, this time of year was the time of year for cherries. Yes.
Yeah, what I find most surprising is that these cherries completely taste different from the cherries you can buy in a store.
Oh, yeah, really?
And yeah, absolutely. They have an absolutely different taste, and that's what I'm enjoying so much. It's just a shame that I have about 25 here or something, and then they're already done. But
Oh, yeah, that's not many.
I have to be careful a little bit with it. No, but I wanted to share something else with you. So I was in the garden and I was plucking in the tree, 5 meters up, there on a ladder, holding fast to the tree that I don't fall. With the one hand and with the other hand trying to grasp some cherries and then put them in a little bag that I took with me, and then try to get down easily again. And I was thinking, of course, while I was doing that, and I was
I'm
thinking
sure.
about Revelation 13. I
Oh,
was thinking about
interesting.
Revelation 13, and Revelation 13 tells us that the beast will receive a deadly wound, or a wound that looks deadly but actually is not deadly, and that wound will be healed.
Yeah, that's right.
And the problem is, Brett, you and I and all the rest of the world, we are so indoctrinated with Seventh-day Adventist teaching about this stuff that we always say that the wound must be the end of the 1260 prophetic day years of the reign of the Antichrist. But where does the Bible actually say that? That's the Seventh-day Adventists that teach that, and everybody else who adheres to their teaching that teaches that. Why does that wound have anything to do with the 1260 years reign? To me, when I pick up the Bible, it is not clear that the 1260-year reign goes together with the receiving of the almost deadly wound of the beast. I mean, you can correct me anytime, but I was thinking maybe that has nothing to do with it. Yeah, because when we read in chapter 13, it says. In verse 2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So he gave him his power, his seat, and great authority. And we know from Revelation 12 that the dragon is the devil. And we know from the understanding that the beast we are talking about is a mixed beast of a leopard, a bear, and a lion. Means Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece.
Yes, that's right.
The undescribable fourth beast of Daniel's prophecy. There is no question about that. And then it says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So it does not say here that the 1260 day year prophecy ends with this. Everybody, quote unquote, assumes that, but it is nowhere written in the Bible. Or am I just crazy? So my thinking when I was up there in that tree and later on this day and I thought about this was the most deadly wound the papacy received was in 1517. The outbreak of the Reformation with Martin Luther.
That's
with
true.
Martin Luther nailing his indulgences apostasy letter on the church door in Wittenberg, publishing that all over Europe. A few years later, in 1522, publishing the Bible in German that set almost all of Europe free. And in the aftermath of that Reformation, the Roman Catholic Church really got hurt. She really lost power. She lost power spiritually, she lost power temporally, and they tried to get it back with the inauguration of the Jesuit order.
Sure, the Council of
And
Trent.
that is what we are reading about in this book, Cold War Babylon, the Jesuit order.
That's right.
It seemed now when we just understand that we see one of his heads were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. When we explain that could also be the start of the Reformation. I mean, not the start, but the real, pushing of the Reformation, because the Reformation started already in the 14th century with Wycliffe. He was the morning star of the Reformation. But it really got into another gear with Martin Luther.
The real synergy. It gained coming
momentum.
Together.
It gained momentum. Wars broke out, like the wars in Germany, where the farmers were revolting against the nobility, and then later on, of course, you had the 30-year War when the papacy struck back, and killed more than 12 million Germans in the beginning of the 17th century. So when we just understand, when we just try to clear our head of all that we have been taught so far, and just take the Bible for it, it doesn't say that in 1260 years ends there, right? And that could be the Reformation. And then it goes on to say, and his deadly wound was healed. Well, what happened at the Council of Trent? The damnation of the Protestant movement by the new founded Jesuit order, right?
Yeah.
And all the world wondered after the beast. What do we have ever since the Jesuits got really into power? All the world wonders after the beast. That's the time that we are living in right now.
Yeah, that's right.
To me, it is just not specified that the 1260-day year prophecy is a certain moment in time that has to be whether 1798 or 1866 or whatever that we learned about before. The papacy is still running, up and running today. When are these 1260 days really ending? Maybe that's with Christ's return? I don't know. But the point is that the Reformation, when that really broke out because of the works Martin Luther did, that was a wounding of the Roman Catholic Church. And please understand me right, I am not dogmatic about that. I'm just sharing my thoughts with everybody. Just saying, could this also be a possibility that we are still in this 1260 days? Where, when you understand it in another place in the Bible, it could be understood that way, that it is said, for the elect's sake, this time was shortened. Who are the elect? Aren't they the saints in Jesus Christ? Just a question, just to put that out there, to leave you to your own thoughts. As I said, I'm not dogmatic about it. I'm not teaching this. I'm giving you that thought. Try to see it this way when you get rid of all that teaching that you have, most and for all, from the Seventh-day Adventists. We should never forget that the Seventh-day Adventist Church was founded by Freemasons, is today, for the last years already, led by a Jesuit-trained CEO in the congregation that they have there, this general convention or general congregation or whatever they're going to call that they adhere to a quote-unquote prophetess of the name of Ellen G. White, who wrote in her books about quote-unquote Mother Earth, which is a New Age term. Why couldn't the SDA, for example, be the false prophet, luring many people into going back to Rome, because they are part of the ecumenical movement as well. Just a few thoughts out there. Never underestimate the power of the devil. As Bill Clinton said in the beginning, a quote of the book of Rulers of Evil, it states, "Never the greatest mistake one man can do on this earth is to underestimate his enemy."
Mm-hmm.
That's not a verbatim quote, but that's the gist of what Bill Clinton was quoted in the beginning of the book Rulers of Evil. When we all adhere to the same teaching, that means that we are all running in the big crowd, and we know that the majority is always wrong. We have to think outside of the box to come to a probably better or different understanding. And the only reason why I'm saying this is to say, please use your own discernment, use your own working brain cells without any outside influence. And that also includes my influence. I don't want to influence you. I just want to give you ideas in which direction to think. Okay? Let's be sure about that. And I also would very much like to return to the book reading of Cold War Babylon now, but I wanted to share that with you because this was an experience that I experienced just today.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe tomorrow I will say, "Oh, I'm totally wrong because now I understand this and this." But I experienced the same thing yesterday evening. Yesterday evening was Sabbath, at least in the United States of America, when I was together with Brett and with our other brother in Bible study, Tom Fress. And we were at the end of the Bible study discussing about the mark of the beast. And I gave an idea to as well Brett as Tom to give them my definition of the mark of the beast. Could it be this and that? And even Tom started to think about that and didn't dismiss that idea directly. And he is one who never, ever, ever easily takes up quote-unquote new ideas, I can tell you. Yeah? So, and I'm not going into that mark of the beast right now, but to me, this is just a sign that the Spirit is leading many of my thoughts. I don't say all of them because I'm still in the flesh. And
yeah, that's right. Well, you know, it's really some things to think about for sure, because the Seventh-day Adventists have a pretty firm foothold on a lot of these historical teachings they do. And well, the question I have is, what do the saints of old have to say about the book of Revelation? I think there's a book, Jorge Apocalypticae, right, Jörg?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it would be interesting to see what it says in there. But, you know, that's a huge book, and there's
about 2,000 pages.
Yeah, about 2,000 pages, and there's a lot of information in there, and one could spend weeks just trying to read through that to come to that knowledge.
If you want to study that book, Jorge Apocalypticae, you don't need weeks, you need months at least, if not years. And especially when you want to understand that completely, it's by
that's right.
Eliot. Well, Eliot is his last name. What's his first name, or his abbreviation of the
E.B. Eliot or something?
E.B. Eliot.
E.B.
Eliot by E.B. Eliot. Jorge Apocalypticae.
Yeah, that's a tough.
And Nicholas Arthur from First Amendment Radio gave an abridgment of that book, and you can look that up in this playlist on First Amendment Radio. Maybe also interesting, but an abridgment, as the name is, of course, is only a shortage of the. It's like a summary of that book, you know. And the danger with things like that is when you leave something out, you will never get the whole picture. I mean, this is like glancing over the Bible, then you don't get the whole picture. You have to read it from the start to the beginning, from the Alpha to the Omega, or from the A to the Z, as we say in our alphabetical language. And even then you don't understand it completely. You have to read it again and again and again, and only if you're led by the Spirit and reading the whole Bible, the real Bible. I mean, the 1611 King James Bible in English, or any other Bible that is based on the Masoretic text in the Law and the Prophets and the Textus Receptus in the New Testament in any language that you read, and only when you read a Bible like this,
Yeah.
the Spirit will lead you into all truth. Yeah,
that's true.
And justification is an instant moment that you experience in your life, that you will be justified by the blood of Jesus Christ. But sanctification is a whole life process. And I and Brett, we are still on the way to get sanctified. Yeah, we are on our sanctification way.
Yeah.
And on that way, of course, we make errors because we are only fallible men. But I think it is important to here and there throw in some ideas that look outside of the box that we are all learned or taught to study in. I just don't want to conform to any box anybody else sets up without ever asking me if I even do want to belong to that box.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right.
And that boxical thinking is, for example, Seventh-day Adventist. Now, I have no bad feelings against the Seventh-day Adventist individual member, but I have a problem with the church hierarchy of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The same way that I have a problem with the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church. The same way that I have a problem with the hierarchy of the Lutheran Church, the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church. All these organized religions, I have a very, very big problem with their hierarchy and with their doctrines, because their doctrines are off the basic doctrine that we should all adhere to. Sola Scriptura, the Bible and the Bible alone. Yeah?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
So I'm not preaching against Seventh-day Adventists, but I'm also asking Seventh-day Adventists to rethink their standing on their hierarchy and doctrinal teachings of their churches, as much as I ask that to do that of Catholics. Why are we reading this book, Cold War Babylon? Because we want people to get to think outside of the box and to see the whole picture, not from the inside. From the inside, you can never see the whole picture. You can only see that when you're outside. I mean, these, just a little example, and then we're going to go into the book reading. But these street artists that are sitting on Broadway, or I don't know, whatever big street, and they do this wonderful paintings on the pavement. You know these guys, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So when you stand in the middle of one of their works, you don't get what it's all about. But when you are meters away or yards away, and maybe can even look from the top down on that, then you see what that picture is all about. But as long as you are standing somewhere in the middle of that picture, you don't get what it's all about. And that's the problem, or the point that I want to point out with what I'm saying here. As long as we are in that kind of doctrine, we can never understand that whole kind of doctrine. We can never see the whole picture, never see what it's really leading to. Therefore, we have to step out. And
that's
we can
a good
only
point,
step.
Dirk. It's like when you adhere to the doctrine, you're actually living it, you teach it, then you're in the doctrine.
Yes.
And once you dispel or you free yourself from the bondage of that, through the discipline of study, and your conscience overcomes that, and you free yourself up for a while, you can look at it from the outside again.
Exactly.
And you don't have to be in it. Yeah, that's right.
You just said in little less words what I tried to tell the last 5 minutes. Oh, that's correct, Tom. That's correct, Brad.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's interesting, you bring that up, because I think that that's a really good analogy, is that oftentimes these physical things have a very strong similarities to spiritual things. There's a duality. And I think the Bible tells us that through, these different lessons that we learn in the flesh. in the nature of mankind, and then you have this humankind, and this whole world is completely entrenched in humanism. It's troubling.
Yeah. Be careful with that word human. I just saw a video a few days ago or something.
Oh yes, I saw
wasn't
that
it?
too.
Wasn't it Return to Christ, or what's his name called?
Run to Christ. Yeah.
Run to Christ. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
And he made that point on human, saying that "you" is an old word for God.
Mm-hmm.
And "you man" means God man. So this is actually the fulfilling of the promise of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. You can be as gods, human.
See, there we go. That's a really good, quick example of, I mean, this is where the world is at.
Yeah.
This is where the world is at. And it's happening in tiny little places like you and me, in our flesh. We have become these people that think we are gods. No, we're not.
Well, Brett, the point is that the temple of God will be defiled. That's what the Bible says. And who is the temple in these days of the New Testament?
Mm-hmm.
We are the temple. Our body is the temple. Our bodies are being defiled with this wrong teaching, with this wrong doctrine.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is that, it's not "do as thou wilt" will be the whole of the law, is it now?
What do you mean it's not that? I mean, that's what the world...
that's
temple.
What the world the temple of our living God.
No, if you do that, if you do, well, many people do that, and
that's what I'm trying to say.
Is defiled.
I'm just trying to quick draw a circle of how how simple this really is. It's not complicated. It really isn't.
As is the case with all the Bible. The Bible is written to be read by a 10-year-old.
That's right.
And not by someone who studied all his life in universities just to get a glance of understanding of the Word of God.
That's right.
Because Jesus Christ said, and didn't we make that point already in the last reading where it was about this pedophilia stuff?
Yeah.
Bring the children to me, the children who are clear of spirit yet. They have not been indoctrinated with all the quote-unquote knowledge, with all the gnosis of this world. But they are clear of mind, and therefore they will suck up the truth of the real Bible as dry sponges. And that's what Jesus Christ meant. That's why he said, if you defile one of these, it is better there was a millstone hanged around your neck and you were drowned in the ocean.
Yep.
Instead of doing that. I mean, it's all going back to that,
Yeah, that's right. And that's in all three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. All three of those Gospels have that.
In 3 of the 4 Gospels, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So there must be some kind of important point if it was in 3 different Gospels, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a very, very important thing to be aware of the type of scrutiny we're going to be under.
Yeah.
In this flesh.
Listen, I want to go back to the book now, Cold Word Babylon, which I haven't even touched today in the reading.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Since 25 minutes or something, we're on something else. But I just want to go back a little bit to the reading that we did last time, which was yesterday, of course. And I just want to ask you, Brett, when you produce the video, make sure that you will put the pictures in that I didn't give any attention yesterday to. I paid attention to these pictures, but I didn't read the texts that were beneath them. Because this is quite interesting, especially the picture on page 490, where it says sexual imagery in the fresco on a ceiling inside the Vatican. Presumably, they will say that the naked baby and open-breasted woman is the infant Jesus and his mother Mary. But who are the other butt-naked winged babies hovering at the top? Angels? Good question, right?
Yeah, good question.
Whenever the Bible speaks of an angel visiting man on this earth, whether it was the archangel Gabriel or it was another angel in the Bible, they were never butt-naked little children, but they were strong men. Remember the angels that came to Sodom and Gomorrah before it was destroyed? Remember the angel Gabriel who gave Daniel his vision? Yeah, he was not a butt-naked little child with angels on with wings on the back, hovering somewhere, right?
No.
So I just want to ask you, get into these pictures, put them into the video, please. And now we are going to continue, except for you have, of course, another comment to make on what I said.
Oh, yeah. Well, my upbringing where I grew up, my dad was involved with art and painting. And I was subjected to all this really horrible stuff when I was a child. And I didn't think too highly of it, all of these paintings of quote unquote angels, like we were talking about, butt naked and all that. Yeah, I was really subjected to a lot of that when I was really young, and it really revolted me, actually. So, probably another reason why I'm really not that involved with visual art that much. It's kind of revolting to me. I don't know. It's just my reaction. But please, Jörg, go ahead. We're ready for the reading now, I think.
Okay, on the bottom on the bottom on page 491, we will come to the next subchapter of the chapter Kingdom of God, or Masterpiece of Satan, the Secret Doctrine, called The Devil and His Surrogates. Malachi Martin's intriguing revelations of the secrets of the Vatican seem to have tacit acceptance by the last two popes, both of whom have kept strangely silent on Martin's damning revelations. Well, I said already earlier, if the Vatican would give any comment on what Malachi Martin wrote, it would just be an admittance. So they just say nothing and leave it out there, and then nobody cares about what Malachi Martin wrote, except for the few thousands in the world of 7 point, I don't know how many billion people covering the earth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's just a drop in the bucket, right? Mm-hmm. If it is that much, who cares? Yeah? In fact, so far, the author continues, the strongest criticism of Martin's book comes not from the Vatican, but notably from the book Clerical Error, a true story. The book is written by Robert Blair Kaiser, Time magazine's former Vatican correspondent, whose most potent objection to Martin's claims is to accuse Martin of being a womanizer and unfaithful to his wife, and hence a liar. Well, if you can't deal with a message, attack the messenger, right? Mm-hmm. Character attack, that is Jesuitical tactics. That is about all Blair has to say. Another protestation, if one can call it that, was issued by a Catholic, the editor of the Catholic journal Catalyst. Quote, that the Catholic Church has its problems is nothing new, but that it has problems on the scale that Greeley and Martin, speaking of Malachi Martin, describe is pure hype. Perhaps it's because I have a visceral aversion to devil's theories, and that I find both books implausible, or perhaps it's because my experiences with the Church allow for a different interpretation. Unquote. That is profound reasoning. Is it? Is that profound reasoning, what he states here? That the Catholic Church has its problems is nothing new. So why don't you do something about it when you know that the Church has problems? Mm-hmm. No, that is our tradition. Just go on. We've done it for 2,000 years. Nobody cares. Nobody will care now. And nobody cares now. And nobody will care in the future. Just, you have the police line of the crime scene. Go on. Nothing to see here. Huh? It has always been that way. Nobody cared. So why should you care now? That the Catholic Church has its problems is nothing new. Well, then do something about it. At least Malachi Martin brought them up, whatever his agenda was. But for the few people who read his book and understood his book, of whom I am not one because I haven't read Malachi Martin's work, but the few people who did maybe got it at least. Yeah, that the Catholic Church has its problem is nothing new, and that to call that profound reasoning, I don't know. I do not agree with the author here. But that it has problems on the scale that Greeley and Martin describe as pure hype. Is it? Really? So all the books written about the Roman Catholic Church and on the Jesuits and all through history, they are all pure hype? Alexander Hislop's The Two Babylons is pure hype? Ralph Woodrow's Babylon Mystery Religion is pure hype? Bill, what's his name? I always want to say Bill Clinton, but that's not the one I mean. Behold the Pale Horse. Bill Cooper.
Yeah.
Made this plus 50-hour-long series on Babylon Mystery Religion. That's pure hype. All the books that James Atkin Wiley wrote, the books that Henry Grattan Guinness wrote, the book that we mentioned earlier by E.B. Elliott, Horae Apocalypticae, all those books and many, 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 many more. Pure hype? Well, according to this Blair, protestation from the Catholic editor of the Catalyst.
Yes.
According to him, that is pure hype. Well, then you throw out the baby with the bathwater, right?
Mm.
I mean, a little bit more discernment I would have wished here in this case by P.D. Stewart. I find both books implausible, or perhaps it's because my experiences with the church allow for a different interpretation. Well, why do your experience with the church allow for a different interpretation? Because you are in that picture. You have to get out of the picture to discover the whole picture. The point we were making before.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Do you see that now? When you're in the shit, you don't smell the shit.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Now,
yeah,
that is profound reasoning.
Right. When you're working in a barn and you're taking care of the cattle, it's really not that hard to get used to the smell once you've been in there a while. You don't think nothing of it.
No. How did Tom yesterday say that in our Bible study? About Cheech and Chong or Cheech and Cheech or whatever, what it was? When it looks like shit and it smells like shit and it tastes like shit, it probably is shit. So It's good that we didn't step into it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You got it.
Yeah, our Bible study sometimes is really hilarious.
It is.
At moments.
Yeah.
The editor of the Catalyst could not refute a single claim that Martin made. No, they never can refute a single claim that anybody makes as long as he makes them on the basis of the Bible. I absolutely do not know and don't even think that Malachi Martin makes single claims that are based on the Bible, on the true word of God. But whenever the Catalyst or somebody else cannot refute a single claim, they change. Instead of attacking the message, they attack the messenger. Character attack. And his best argument is encapsulated in these words, quote, "Now, lest someone think that these are simply novels, think again. Both Greeley and Martin have told Peter Steinfeld of the New York Times that their description of the Catholic Church is positively true," unquote. Who cares what they tell anybody of the New York Times? Because the New York Times is under control of the Roman Catholic Church, as are all media outlets, remind you, because of Miranda Prosus and Inter Mirifica.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The
Overseen
editor then,
at the top. Yep.
Yeah. The editor then seeks support from Peter Steinfeld of the New York Times, who, quote-unquote, charged Malachi Martin with fanning the flames of anti-Catholicism. Notice that, apart from his own personal aversion to devil's theories, The editor of the Catalyst does not say that he regards Martin's statements as anti-Catholicism. He merely states that was the view expressed in the New York Times, which newspaper, you will recall, the Jesuit Carroll Quigley says is a Rhodes instrument and therefore a Jesuit organ. Well, thanks, P.D. Stewart, to make that point now that I made just 2 minutes earlier. Mr. Rhodes left express instructions and a large amount of money in his will for the creation of an association of secret societies based on the Constitution, not of the United States of America, but based on the constitutions of the Jesuits. He instructed that the secret association was to include leading newspapers. And the Roman Catholic Church says all newspapers are ours. And whether they are ours and controlled by our hierarchy, or when they get too many readers, too many followers, we will just shut them down. And how do they do that? Well, they buy them off and close them down. That's one way of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they run this whole globalist scheme, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Buying out the middle class and put it all into big conglomerates. That's what they are doing. And these conglomerates, these multinational concerns, companies as we know them, are nothing else but the kolchoses that you had in the USSR at the time. Nothing else. Run from the top. Yeah? And people just don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Rhodes left express instructions and a large amount of money in his will for the creation of an association of secret societies based on the Constitution of the Jesuits. He instructed that the secret association was to include leading newspapers, leading magazines, leading television series, leading Hollywood productions, movies, etc., etc. How about that? You always have to see the full circle, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
In any event, the author says, neither the editor of The Catalyst, Peter Steinfels, nor Robert Blair Kaiser, Times Magazine's correspondent, could reasonably deny Malachi Martin's statements as true, since Martin was a close confidant of 3 popes. While these men, his detractors, probably never had as much as an audience with a pope. Moreover, it was for the Pope or the Vatican to deny or rebuke Malachi, not some popular magazine editor or newspaper journalist. Well, P.D. Stewart, tell that to the crowd. What he actually is doing by putting this in his book, and we are actually doing by reading this book to you. That's the point. You have no knowledge of the subject, but you have an opinion about it. And then you're spreading your opinion as the truth. That's how the world is run today. Yeah?
Yeah.
It was for the Pope or the Vatican to deny or rebuke Malachi, not some popular magazine editor or newspaper journalist. Now, if we think that Martin's revelations about Satanism are alarming, then we are stunned by the corroborating statements from another Catholic archbishop, Emmanuel Milingo, an exorcist and the author of the book Face to Face with the Devil. Milingo made a similar admission in a speech entitled Satanists at Work in the Vatican, which was given at the Fatima 2000 International Congress on World Peace, held in Rome on November 18th to 23rd, 1996. Now, what's wrong with this sentence already? The Fatima 2000 International Congress? What's that all about? Well, I guess that you have to go and read another book that I'm going to read on my channel. I don't know if I started that when this video comes out, if it is already published, if I then still have to do it, I don't know, because I have so many things to do. But get that book free online. It costs you nothing. You can get it as a PDF. Queen of Islam, Queen of Rome, Queen of all. It's not such a big book. It's about 140, 150 pages, I think. And it deals with the apparitions of the quote-unquote Mother Mary in all her versions, which also is, of course, Fatima, and tells you about how these apparitions are being used to push, and I'm using this term now absolutely correctly, to push humanity into the acceptance of a new world order, one world religion. And I'm very aware of using that word humanity while explaining a little bit earlier in this broadcast to you what human stands for, okay? Because man created by God will not fall for this deception. But humanity, the people who think that they are gods and live for themselves and not for the spirit, they will fall for this. Fatima 2000 International Congress on World Peace. Makes me vomit to even speak about this. But we have to mention the facts. Addressing an international audience of Catholic bishops, priests, nuns, and laity, this bishop, Archbishop Melingo, said, quote, "The devil in the Catholic Church is so protected now that he is like an animal protected by the government. Put on a game preserve that outlaws anyone, especially hunters, from trying to capture or kill it. The devil within the church today is actually protected by certain church authorities." Well, didn't we start our broadcast today with a little excursion into the Bible, Brett, where I was reading from Revelation 13, if I'm not mistaken?
Right.
What was I reading there from Revelation 13, verse 2? "And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, and his seat and great authority." So when the dragon, which is the devil, that we biblically understand, gives the beast the power, the seat, and great authority, of course he is in that beast. And that's what it's all about. The devil in the Vatican? Of course, because the devil founded the Vatican. The devil gave the Vatican that beast, that fourth beast of the Daniel vision, the seat, the power, and the authority. Of course he is in there. That beast is the devil. It just wears a quote-unquote, very wisely chosen term, a human mask. Okay? Protected by whom? The author asks. When asked, quote, "Are there men of the curia," means of the hierarchy in the cardinal or on the cardinal level, the quote-unquote magisterium, as it is always also called, magi, "Are there men of the curia who are followers of Satan?" Unquote. Bishop Melingo responded, "Certainly there are priests and bishops. I stop at this level of ecclesiastical hierarchy because I am an archbishop. Higher than this, I cannot go." But that doesn't mean that higher than that, there is nothing. But he only knows what is on his level or beneath. He cannot make any assumption above. But if he had two working brain cells, those were telling him, dude, when the basis is wrong, the top is wrong too. In other words, right, huh?
Yeah, a little leaven leavens the whole lump.
Yeah. We say in German, I said that already in another broadcast in the reading of this book. In German, we have this saying, "Der Fisch beginnt am Kopf zu stinken." Yeah. So the fish starts smelling or rotting at the head.
I think I heard this one before. That's right.
Yeah. So when the bottom speaking of the priests and the bishops until the archbishop, which is Bishop Malingo one, when that is already rotten, and when they're already, as he said, certainly there are priests and bishops, I stop at this level, who are actually protected by certain, who are actually in the workings with the devil. When they are on that level, then of course they are on the top, because the fish starts to rot from the head. In other words, P.D. Stewart continues, he was not prepared to speak about his superiors. However, and of some significance, Archbishop Malingo cited a papal statement to back up his assertions. Quote, Antichrist, that of course is my emphasis, Pope Paul VI said that the smoke of Satan had entered into the Vatican. Unquote. He told his audience. So Antichrist Pope Paul VI, whose pontificate was from 1963 to 78, knew of this transaction with the devil and did nothing. Likewise, Antichrist John Paul II. Now, was the devil being protected by the popes? Or should we rather ask, is the devil protecting the popes? Who has more power, you think? Archbishop. I mean, yeah, when you read
help but laugh.
Yeah, when you read a sentence like this, isn't that obvious?
Yes.
Was the devil being protected by the popes? Really? Who has the power?
Oh. Well, there's a footnote here, Jörg, and I was reading at the bottom of this footnote. It was speaking of Archbishop Malingo here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just read the whole thing. Reported in the winter of 1997 issue of, quote, the Fatima Crusader, unquote, a conservative pro-Marian Catholic newsletter that hosted the Fatima 2000 Congress, and in the March 3rd, 1997 issue of the New American, Malingo's work as an exorcist is mentioned in the London Telegraph in February 7, 1999. The Vatican since excommunicated Malingo from the church, but not Malachi Martin. One was just an archbishop, the other too influential and knowledgeable about the Vatican secrets to take on while he was alive. Yeah.
Yeah, those people then they usually get away with by poisoning them and killing them.
Right.
So one is excommunicated, and if that Archbishop Malingo knew what that actually would do to his soul, he would rejoice instead of cry about it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true. Yeah, you know, that's the biggest gift the Pope could give me, to excommunicate me openly.
Yeah, right.
I would rejoice about that, you know.
Yeah, that's right. And the Bible says to rejoice, actually, when you're under those circumstances too, right?
Oh, I don't know about that, but I know that Martin Luther burned
rejoice when you're under tribulation, you know, because then your redemption draws nigh, I think. Let me find
that. Okay. Okay, but is excommunication tribulation? Well, yeah, maybe it is, because it leads to tribulation, to personal tribulation, because when you are excommunicated, you are free for everybody else to be killed. And it is even a meritorious work if you are being killed, because when you are excommunicated, you are a heretic in the understanding, not of the Bible, but in the understanding of the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, that's true. Okay. So they maybe kill or they maybe excommunicate the Archbishop, but they didn't do anything about Malachi Martin. But Malachi Martin is also dead in the meantime, I think, in now 2018. And, well, if you want to investigate that, then just investigate how long did he live and under what circumstances did he lose his life. And sometimes it's very interesting, and you will see that maybe he was taken care of. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or, as you could also say over there in the United States of America, maybe he was JFK'd.
Yeah.
Right. So, was the devil being protected by the popes? Sometimes Peter Stewart just, makes a little joke in this book, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Otherwise, you could not write the sentence this way, right?
Right.
Anyway, Archbishop Melingo worked inside the Vatican for many years as special delegate to the Pontifical Council for the pastoral care of immigrants and itinerants. He is therefore uniquely qualified to speak on the issue of Satanism within the Catholic Church. Another Vatican insider, the respected Jesuit Malachi Martin, makes a statement that not only buttresses Melingo's revelations, but also answers our question: protected by whom? In the Fatima Crusader article just mentioned, Malachi Martin, who you will recall was a Vatican diplomat to 3 popes, is quoted as saying, quote, Archbishop Melingo is a good bishop, and his contention that there are Satanists in Rome is completely correct. Anybody who is acquainted with the state of affairs in the Vatican in the last 35 years is well aware that the Prince of Darkness has had and still has his surrogates in the court of St. Peter in Rome. Unquote. Well, you don't need to read this book. You just need the Bible. You just need to read Revelation chapter 13, verse 2. And you know that when the devil founds an institution, of course he is in that institution to control it. Not the popes control the devil, but the devil controls the popes. And even though we are a few minutes short of an hour, but only a few minutes, we start the next subchapter, next reading, which is called A Holy and Ominous Silence. We would not have time enough to go through that little subchapter today, so I opt for end this reading here today with a few minutes short of an hour, but I hope that you enjoyed this short reading and long discussion on the subject of Code Word Babylon, on the subject of the Bible, on the subject of our understanding of things, including that what I was speaking about in the first 25 minutes of this broadcast, speaking about this, understandings that I got from just reading the Bible, and just try to tell you that you and we all have to start thinking outside of the box, especially when it comes to man-made Bible interpretation. Let the Bible explain itself. And take the Bible literally. And when the Bible not literally says that and that happened in this time exactly, then you can listen to people who suggest, well, maybe it happened in that time, but don't follow their dogmatic teaching and saying it's this way or the highway. No, it's Jesus' way or the broad way that leads into perdition. Choose wisely which way you want to go. Thank you, Brett, for the invitation. And to our listeners and viewers of this video, until next time, Maranatha.
That for the first time in human history, for the first time in all of human history, almost all of mankind is politically awake. And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control a million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict. And I believe that we've come horribly off track in the years since the fall of the Soviet Union. And we're starting now in the 21st century, which I believe strongly is a crisis both of our church, a crisis of our faith, a crisis of the West, and a crisis of capitalism.
His son Jesus is here in our midst. His bride, the church, is honored to host an event affirming the dignity of the human person and the sacredness of all human life.
I think Russia is no longer a communist state, first of all. That's very important to realize. It hasn't yet defined itself, however, effectively as a democracy. It is still uncertain.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict, of which if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, to really be able to not just stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs against this new barbarity that's starting, that we will literally eradicate everything that we've been bequeathed over the last 2,025 years.
You didn't mention the president by name, but it was hard not to conclude that that's who you were referring to. Is that fair?
I was certainly referring to the threats that we are now facing with this stated goals of this administration, which would upset the last 70 years of a new world order, which was established after World War II. 70 years based on human rights, respect for the law, free trade, all of the things, aspects of this world order that took place after one of the most horrific, terrible wars in history, and I'm for maintaining it.
We are grateful to be citizens of one nation under God, who acclaim this evening that in God we trust. Bless our two candidates, our benefactors, and those whom the L. Smith Foundation has been honored to serve for 7 decades. Guide us safely home, both this evening and for all eternity, through Christ our Lord. Amen.